never gonna hurt myself or put myself in the hospital. I just needed to feel the pain to put punctuation on what I'm feeling inside. Imagining for a moment that it could hold my weight, I envisioned myself knotting the string around a noose and pulling it down around my neck. Then, when the nurses called in as a result of my pulling the string, she'll see my body dangling ironically from the string. That, in a place like this, is pure comedy gold.
Around 13, I started getting really angry and hating my mom. I mean, really hating my mom. She hated me too. We ended up strangling each other in the kitchen. I was always an angry kid, so I started running away and doing angry teenage girl things. Cutting myself, getting high, not going to school.
This could be you, or someone you know, but it doesn't have to be.
Like the little jazz of pain of hair as it was coming out. Yeah, that little sensation. Just, yeah, right before it left the follicle. That moment. Right before it's left. And then I love it.
It was just really whatever. Good times, bad times, it didn't matter. There was no ceremony. It wasn't like, okay, this just happened. I'll just go hack off a piece of my flesh.
Help save our youth. Help save our youth.
Help save our youth.
One team, one youth, one life, one home,
One family, one heart.
one mind, one child.
One person, one individual, one soul.
They need you. We need you. If you or someone you know is suffering, seek help immediately. You don't have to suffer alone. Someone is always there for you. A friend, a counselor, a parent. Just ask. You're not suffering alone. Please help raise awareness for teen self-injury. Our youth needs you.
County Fire 86.
Female OD'd on 20 Motrin and cut her arm with a kitchen knife.
At 2 a.m. on June 5th, 2013, Paris Jackson was rushed to a children's hospital in Los Angeles and put onto 72-hour involuntary psychiatric hold. She had cut her arms deeply with a meat cleaver and ingested 20 painkillers. How could the daughter of one of the most famous musicians in American history be considering suicide?
What we need to focus more on is more the deeper reasons about, what leads to self-harm. It kind of makes me think of like the myth about suicide, where, oh, you know, you don't talk about suicide. If you talk about it, then it's going to lead to more suicides. And we all know that that's not true. Actually, it's the opposite. You know, talking about it openly usually is helping.
If she, being relatively well off, had felt the need to act in such extreme ways, what does this say about teens in less admirable situations?
The girls and the boys that end up actually hurting themselves are usually ones that do have other issues.
What could drive a person to cut themselves with a meat cleaver and then subsequently down a bottle of pain medicine? Is it stress? Is it heartache or some other kind of pain? Or is it just for attention?
These individuals who suffer from, you know, self-injury and these patterns of behavior, I think growing up they don't learn, I guess, functional ways of dealing with life stressors, of dealing with really negative emotions. So it gets really intense, it kind of boils up. And because they haven't developed adaptive strategies of how to deal with all these emotions, you know, unfortunately they turn to these very intense kind of things, like sometimes they cut themselves, sometimes they burn themselves, you know, it's really dangerous. So I think a lot of it comes from this lack of what they call emotional regulation. You know, how do you deal with, you know, really intense emotions that we all feel, we've all experienced?
The urge comes from relieving pain. It's trying to get the internal pain external. And there's many reasons why people cut, you know, specifically cutting, and other things such as hair pulling or, you know, banging. Wrist banging was a very common one where you see bruises on the wrist. But ones, for the most part, what I hear a lot of is just to stop feeling so numb and to feel alive. To the point where when it comes to actually cutting, I knew a girl that I worked with that cut her wrists, not to try and commit suicide or anything, but she wanted to see the blood flow, to know that she was alive. It was the red against the white skin that helped her to feel like that she wasn't dead. Yeah. You know, so it just really comes from that pain, the internal pain that they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to cope with it, and so this seems like a way to cope. And for many, it is a coping skill, and it almost becomes like an addiction.
In my case, especially with my sister and I, there is no trigger. It's just, we must do it.
You get to a point where just a little bit of cut, or the wrist banging, or just a little bit of hair pulling no longer works. So now they have to pull it harder, or they have to cut deeper or cut longer to get that same relief. So you get the pain tolerance, which is what happens with alcoholics, with crack addictions, with, you know, cocaine and heroin and all of that. You get that tolerance built up. Same thing with self-harm. You get that tolerance built up, so you have to hurt yourself at a deeper, intenser level, or even more often. And so what we often see is the adults and children that do cutting, again specifically, that seems to be one of the most popular forms. The risk comes in cutting too deeply. They're not actually trying to kill themselves, and that's the common misconception, is that they must be suicidal if they're hurting themselves, and that's not the case. A lot of times they don't want to die, they just want to feel. And so they end up doing something like that, and a lot of times it's accidental suicide if they go too deeply, because the little cut, the superficial cut, no longer works.
It is just like the most bizarre story. Has a lot to do with family dynamics, in that and that's the interesting thing about it, is that it had to be all those elements coming together that started it. It was the fact that my grandmother only had daughters and had a miscarried baby boy when she first got married, so no boy children for her. So then my brother was born, first boy, and she was just beguiled by my brother and had time for nobody else. So then I came along 3 years later, oh, another girl. Well, she'd had girls, she wasn't that interested in me. No. Well, okay, so this is kind of the beginning of it. And then my mother and father took a vacation. Their first vacation during parenthood, I was 3, my brother was 6, and they went away and they left my brother and I with this grandmother and grandfather who was a shadow figure in the background. And of course, my grandmother was absolutely thrilled to have this 2 weeks alone with this little boy that she just idolized. Oh yeah, and then there's this girl.
Yeah.
You know, here we go again. And at the time, you know, like children will have like blankets that they're attached to, or some kind of
Binkies or something.
Yeah, blanket,
Yeah.
binky, whatever, you know. I had a horse, a calico horse. I can still remember it. It's like burned on my brain. It was like a blue and white calico horse with a red yarn mane and tail. And up until that time, the only, I had this with me at night, and I would play with the yarn of the mane and the tail. So then I was with my grandmother, and I like to think that it wasn't just meanness, and give her the idea, give her the grace.
Benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, benefit of a doubt. But she was mean. It came out more and more and more that she was just a mean person.
Yeah.
So she threw this away. And that did it. Then I started pulling my hair. And in the 2 weeks that my parents were gone, when they came home, I had not a hair left on my head.
Wow.
And my grandmother, she had to see what was happening. She had to put 2 and 2 together. She wasn't a stupid person. She had to see that I was distressed. She had to know that it was because she had thrown this thing away. I was 3 years old. My parents were gone for the first time. I was with this woman that didn't, pay that much attention to me.
Yeah.
And that's actually what started it. And then it was just uncontrollable. Well, even in kindergarten, my mother said she was embarrassed to take me to kindergarten because I was just big, bald patches all over my head.
You are not alone, and that, you need to reach out. Reaching out is very important.
I know you may feel alone and scared, but there's somebody out there that can help you. Just reach out and find them.
Everybody's got something that they do, and it's nothing to be ashamed about.
With my organization, Girls Above Society, I promote confidence and leadership in young girls so that they never feel like they have to self-harm. My website is www.girlsabovesociety.org. There's a lot of great resources for young girls there. I also just recently wrote a book called Steps to Success and Empowerment Guide. If you're looking for some great resources on self-harm and you feel like you need some help but you don't feel comfortable talking to a loved one about it, you can visit www.selfinjury.com. or you can call 1-800-DON'T-CUT. These are great anonymous resources where you can get the help you really need.